All right, everyone. Welcome to the Stop the Sabotage webinar. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to join us. And there's a never-ending supply of reasons not to attend anything, not just webinars like this, but not to go to your unit meetings, not to attend seminar, career conference, leadership, what have you. And so just the fact that you are not one of the people that are looking for reasons not to do something, and instead you're one of the people searching for reasons to build your business, to work on yourself, etc., means to me that you are the cream of the cream of the cream of the crop. And I acknowledge you for that. And I want you to acknowledge and appreciate yourself for that as well. My name is Sean Smith. That is a picture of me. It's actually a caricature of me on the right-hand side there. And today in this webinar, we're going to be talking about stop the sabotage. Sabotage is something that almost everybody deals with in all walks of life. Today, we're going to be talking about it specifically as it relates to your Mary Kay business. So the first thing that you've got to understand is, yes, you can do this. And what I want you to do is suspend any disbelief that you have about yourself, about the business, about your past experiences. All of those things need to be put to rest if you're going to think about expansiveness, right? You've got to, at least for a moment, you've got to consider that you can be limitless. You can be limitless in life. You can be limitless personally in any area, and you can be limitless specifically in Mary Kay, but not if you're swimming upstream. If you take a look at that little blue guy down there, that blue fish is going the wrong way. Now, while on one level, I am all about going a different way than most people, what I'm talking about here is swimming against the current internally, right? Most people are traveling upstream against their habits, against their identities, against their beliefs, against their drivers, against their values. And that's what makes it all so difficult. It feels like you're going uphill because you're going against the current. So you basically have two fundamental choices. Do you want to keep swimming against the current, or do you want to change the current? And hopefully you can feel, I just felt it in my body as I said that, when you change the current, or when you even think about changing the current, everything becomes so much easier. So here's how to fix it. Or actually, let me tell you how to not fix it. You're not going to fix it by focusing on your behaviors. You can take seminars and read books on how to stop procrastinating and how to stop being a perfectionist all day long. That's not going to change the actual challenge. You can, or the problem. You can focus on your identities, but that's not going to attack the actual cause of the problem. You can look at your drivers, what your values are. You're getting closer, but that's still not the actual problem. If you want to change what is at the core of all of the problems, you've got to go after your beliefs, because these are the seeds. It's like if you look in your garden and you've got weeds in your garden, you can keep clipping the weeds all you want, but if you don't uproot the weeds, they're just going to grow back. So your choice is, do you want to keep playing at the surface, or do you want to uproot the actual problem, the actual seeds, right? So at a fundamental level, that's what we're dealing with here. That's what I mean by going inside out. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to give you some of the specific challenges that many of you have in your business around fear, rejection, failure, etc. And hopefully you can hone in on what the actual solution needs to be, right? So let's first talk about fear. In general, you've got to understand that almost all fears are mislabeled. We tell ourselves that we're afraid of an activity, but you're not afraid of the activity. You're not afraid of warm chatting. You're not afraid of sales. You're not afraid of making phone calls. You're not afraid of speaking to people in your business. You're not actually afraid of the activity. What you're afraid of is the negative emotional outcome of the activity, meaning if you call somebody on the phone and they don't answer, you're afraid of the way you feel after you hang up the phone, and specifically what you say to yourself that creates all of these negative emotional outcomes, right? So we've got two things. We've got the activity, or we've got the outcome. So you have two choices. You can live the rest of your life trying to avoid the activity, which is called coping. In other words, if you think you're afraid of talking to people, then you can live the rest of your life trying to avoid talking to people, which is a completely wrong choice when you're in the people business, right? Or you can remove the risk. You can attack the negative emotional outcome, and you can actually clear away the fear. So that's what I mean by coping versus clearing. Do you want to try to avoid the triggers of the fear, or do you want to remove the ingredient that's creating the fear? Now, I say don't do the top one because I don't think you're here to cope. I think you're here to live with freedom and not restriction. But most people choose that. Even if they don't do it intentionally, most people are just trying to live with the coping mechanisms of their fears, right? So let's even dive deeper and let's specifically dissect the fear of failure and or rejection. They basically work similarly, right? There's an event that happens, like somebody tells you no, and it feels like somebody just screamed at you, like this lady just did to this poor guy. And we have all these emotional reactions once somebody makes a human sound. I mean, if you think about it, people are afraid of a sound. Like most people will go to their grave having not achieved their potential because primarily they're afraid of hearing a human sound. And that sound is no. Most people are so afraid of rejection that they don't try and go after their goals. And if you think about it, that's incredibly sad, especially when we are in charge of what that sound means. That sound no means absolutely nothing until we make it mean everything, right? So let's look at failure and rejection. Regardless of what somebody says, we make a judgment, right? There's no inherent meaning around what somebody says. If they say no, we're the ones that decide that it's a rejection or that it was a failure because we didn't get a name or a number, they didn't join the business. That's our judgment. Now, once we make that judgment, it triggers our beliefs. In other words, it triggers the internal perpetual stories that we have around not being good enough or not being able to win or people don't like me or anything that feels like some sort of inadequacy story, right? I'm not good enough. I'll never succeed, whatever. That's the story that actually has emotions attached to it. And the emotions are negative. They are embarrassment, sadness, hurt, depression, hopelessness, feeling helpless, dejected. All around negativity is what we feel. And because we're in that state of mind, we determine, or not determine, but we create these behaviors out of that state of mind, right? So we'll retreat, we'll avoid, we will resist whatever the activities are. And it's those behaviors that we call sabotage, right? It's that resistance that ultimately forms sabotage. But I want you to understand that the sabotage is a result of the emotions, which are a result of the beliefs, which are a result of the judgment. So you're not afraid of people telling you no. You're not afraid of rejecting or getting rejected by people. You're afraid of what you're going to feel afterwards. And ultimately, you are afraid of how you are going to make yourself feel. So the good news around that is you can change this whole process here. You can change it by shifting the judgments that you have, but that can only work if you work on your beliefs. You don't control people saying no to you. In fact, in Mary Kay, most people are going to say no to you. You can only control your reaction. You can only control your judgment to that process, right? So what I want you to take a look at now is these emotions, the embarrassment, the sadness, the hurt, the hopelessness, etc. Because it's these emotions that really create our behavior patterns, right? And just like this little cat who's afraid of whatever this little guy is afraid of, when you have the fear of some potential negative outcome, you're going to want to retreat. You're going to want to protect yourself. You're going to want to run and hide, right? And whenever you're in that place of not wanting to experience something, yet you know you've got to take action, you're going to be like this dude here that just got a collar put on. You're going to be like, nope, I'm not doing that. And you're going to want to dig your claws into the carpet no matter how hard somebody's pulling you, or no matter how hard you're trying to push yourself or you're trying to pull yourself. You're going to be like, nope, there's no way I'm going to make phone calls. And then it leads to the stories of, I shouldn't call people right now because they're at dinner. I shouldn't call people now because I don't want to sound pushy, or now's not a good time because it's in the middle of the day, blah, blah, blah. That's all a function of you being afraid of the emotions, right? So if we can clear, now that's called procrastination. If we can clear those emotions, now we can start to unwind this process of procrastination, but not until we clear the emotions. And the emotions, what I want you to really understand, the emotions are from your beliefs. Okay? So I want you to when we dissect these fears, I want you to identify what's the actual ingredient that's causing the problem, and what happens if you change the ingredient. And so I want you to hear the story of Judy, who's a director in Illinois. She said that she started to focus on only what she can control. She let go of the things that she couldn't control, such as other people saying no, other people lying to her, other people not showing up in her business. And basically, she started to identify the actual problems, right? And once she focused on what she could control, her results went through the roof. She tripled almost her production. She went from 17 to 73 team members, and she realized that she couldn't solve a problem with the same mind that actually created the problem. So when you shift your energy around the emotions that you're creating and you start to only focus on what you can control, you can have tremendous results in your business. But again, it's got to be an inside out shift, right? So let's now look at perfectionism, which operates similarly, but there are some specific and distinct differences that I want to highlight for you. Perfectionism is really an unhealthy connection between who you are and what you do, or your self-worth and your performance. See, we are programmed in society that when we perform better, we should feel better about ourselves. And the flip side is also true then. When we're not performing well, we should not feel good about ourselves. So that's why we have this unhealthy connection between who we are and what we accomplish. That's the difference between self-esteem and self-confidence. Now, this is a horrible problem in society that most people have. And the actual problem is not perfectionism. It's not that you have this extra gene in your chromosomes or you inherited this behavior pattern from your parents or from anybody else. That's not the problem. The problem is that you've been programmed to have a conditional self acceptance. What that means is you only accept yourself sometimes. When you're doing well, you accept yourself. When you're not doing well, you don't accept yourself. And because of that, you have to pretend that you're perfect. Because if you can put off this air of perfection, then you can basically fool people or fool yourself that you can feel good about who you are because of what you've accomplished. And it's such a debilitating connection that most people never really understand, and they never understand how to detach these things. The way you do it is through your beliefs, right? Now, at a at a surface level, what you can do is stop focusing on perfection and start focusing on excellence. Because inside of perfectionism, there's a piece of you wanting to achieve well, like you wanting to achieve at a high level. And I don't want you to get rid of that. But I want you to let go of the idea that you can be perfect. The reason you generally want to be perfect is so you can prove your value at the highest level, right? But when you start focusing on excellencism and you detach the connection between who you are and what you do, now we can start unwinding this debilitating uh, behavior pattern called perfectionism, right? And when you do that, you have higher self confidence and you give yourself permission to take more action, because if things don't go well, it's not going to affect your self-esteem. That's basically the shift that Gigi made. She said her confidence has grown. She said because of that, she increased her yearly retail sales by $3,000. She paid off 8 credit cards. 8 credit cards. And she said for the first time in her 25-year Mary Kay career, she had 5 active team members. And that's because of the inside out shift that she made. The third thing I want to talk to you about and dissect here is the fear of success. Now, this is the most dangerous fear of them all by far, because it's illogical. It doesn't make any conscious success or conscious sense until and unless you understand how the unconscious brain works. And so you have the fear of success when there's a conflict between what you believe success entails and your values. Now, again, you'll see a theme here. This is from your beliefs. So, as an example, if you think that success in Mary Kay equals more hard work, more responsibility, more exposure to people's judgments, more time away from your family, more responsibility to motivate your team members, etc., then you're probably going to create a fear of success, because nobody that I know has ever gotten into Mary Kay to increase any of that stuff. Or let's say that you've got specifically a belief around money, that success financially means that you're greedy or you're selfish or that you're not spiritual, that money will change you, that it makes you a bad person, etc. If more financial success equals more of these kinds of negative, yucky feelings, which obviously offend your values, then you want to allow yourself to be successful, because your values will always win. They operate at a deeper level where your beliefs are. So catch the message here. You've got to work on your beliefs. Now, I want to give you 2 specific circumstances of fear of success that many of you are dealing with right now. And the first one is a fear of the word yes. Now, we talked about how most people are afraid of this human sound called no, but you know what? A lot of people are actually more afraid of hearing a yes. And the reason is, remember, we're afraid of the painful outcome of people saying either yes or no. So the question to ask yourself is, which actually hurts more? Somebody saying yes and then at some point in time quitting the business, maybe asking to return all of their products, maybe not answering your phone calls anymore, just quitting, joining the witness protection program, and you can never get a hold of them again. Does that hurt more? Or does it hurt more when somebody just says no and they never actually get into your life or get into your business? Most people would say that the yes hurts more. And if the yes hurts more, but the no hurts also, then you really have a lose-lose scenario. Regardless of what people say, there's a negative outcome. Now, again, your experience of those human sounds are going to be determined by your beliefs. And until you detach who you are from what you accomplish, and until you detach your self-value from whether people tell you yes or no, and until you detach your ability as a leader or your value as a human being or your value as anybody, as just a director in Mary Kay, or your value as a team member, until you detach those from other people's choices and decisions, you'll never be able to actually put yourself out there on the line, because your self-esteem will always be at risk, right? So we've got to detach at the belief level who you are from what you do, and then you won't have this fear of a yes. A similar pattern is what I call the fear of the climb, right? If you've had success in Mary Kay before, you've been a red jacket, you've been a director, you've been a team leader, you got into DIQ, fell out, whatever your success is, if you've fallen away from a certain level of success, you have an emotional joy that came from you climbing up the hill. But you've also got emotional pain that came from you falling down the hill. Now, your unconscious mind is more afraid of the pain than it is excited about the joy. And since the pain came from falling down the hill, The unconscious mind says, how can I avoid the pain of falling? Well, the way that you can avoid the pain of falling is to avoid climbing. Because if you never climb back up the hill, you can't fall back down from it. So again, we've got to play at the belief level if you want to detach your emotional joy, your self esteem from the climb and from the fall. If you want to detach who you are from those experiences, then and only then will you be able to get rid of this fear of the climb. Otherwise, you will always have conscious and even more than that, unconscious resistance, which is more dangerous. You'll always have unconscious resistance to getting back on the bicycle and pedaling again and trying to achieve. Even though on some level, you know you can do it because you did it before, at a deeper level, you don't even want to do it because you don't want to experience that fall. You don't want to experience the embarrassment. You don't want to experience what it's like to tell your team that you're no longer a director, or to explain to somebody why you're no longer driving the pink Cadillac, or to just come to grips with yourself internally. That ego shock of falling down from a hill that you spent so much time and energy climbing. So these are basically the fallouts. These are the ways that your beliefs at a deeper level is going to show up inside your behavior patterns. So you can either try to wrestle with the patterns at the surface, or you can play the game that I'm inviting you to play from an inside out perspective and uproot the weeds. So here's what I want you to get from this presentation: that your beliefs internally are going to determine everything. They're going to determine your identities, your drivers, your values, the definitions you have of pain, pleasure, right, wrong, good, bad, success, failure. They're going to determine the expectations you have of other people. They'll determine your head talk. They'll determine all of the choices that you make. They'll determine all of your actions. Basically, all of your results in life and business. If I can make just a blanket statement, and I very rarely make universal statements like that, but in this case, I believe it. All of your results in life and business will be determined by your belief system. You will never be able to outperform your belief system. So any attempt at behavioral change without belief change from an internal perspective is doomed. At best, it's short-lived. I'm not saying you can't make a little bit of progress. You can, but it can't be sustainable, and it can't fundamentally or foundationally change your life, because fundamental shifts and foundational shifts can only happen at the belief level. They can only happen at the roots. So, this journey that you are on, the journey that you chose as an entrepreneur, the journey that you chose inside of Mary Kay, is rarely easy. Most people want it to be easy. They think sometimes that it's going to be easy, but it ain't easy. And most of you, I would say 99% of you on this call, if you're still around, you know it's not easy, but you're willing to play the game because you also know that it will be worth it. And most people on this planet just don't ever really understand the fulfillment of playing that game that's challenging but worth it. So, what I want you to constantly remind yourself of, you've got to just go back, you've got to go internal and say, what were your little girl dreams? When you were a little child, what did you dream of? I know you didn't dream of coping. I know you didn't dream of dealing with fears. I know you didn't dream of settling for anything. At some point in time, you only dreamt about freedom, about huge, gigantic goals. And inside those dreams is everything you need to succeed if you're willing to tap into them, and if you're willing to really get back to that place. And personal development, truth be told, is more about undevelopment than it is. It's more about chipping away at all the things that we've become. It's not about becoming anybody new. It's about unbecoming all of the false identities that you've put on, that you've created along the way. It's really about getting back to your childlike state where you were ferociously curious about life, when you were willing to take on all challenges, when you didn't care about falling down because you knew that your dreams were big enough for you to get back up. That's what this is about. And that game can only be played and won at the belief level, at the internal level. So that's what I invite you to do, because in the end, when we look back on our lives, it won't matter so much about whether or not you achieved your tangible goals. The question you're going to ask yourself simply is this: did you try hard enough? Did you go for it? Did you give it everything you could? And if you can honestly tell yourself you tried your hardest, then you will have pride around the way you handled this thing called success. If you didn't, all you have left is regret. And that's the biggest fear that I came face to face with when I was 13 years old and I almost died. I realized that at some point in time, if I don't go after every last one of my goals and dreams, I was going to have the what if conversation. What if I would have tried harder? What could I have become? So I don't want you to look back and feel bad about anything you've done in your past, but I want you to look forward from this point and just say, no matter what happens, you're going to get up and you're going to try harder. You're going to keep swinging the bat. You're going to keep taking the shot. You're going to keep pedaling, because that's ultimately what's going to lead you to success. And in life, you basically have two choices. You can commit to a life of convenience and a life of comfort. You can continue working on or trying to work through or deal with or cope with the symptoms, with the surface level challenges, with all of the behaviors. You can try to fight an unconscious, illogical, and irrational problem with some logical and rational and intellectual solution which never works. Or you can be more committed to your growth. You can be more committed to changing the game foundationally. You can embrace the challenge and actually learn to love the challenge. And if you're willing to roll up the sleeves, your sleeves, if you're willing to go for it, if you're willing to play the game that you're meant to play by doing the internal work, regardless of how long it takes, regardless of even if it hurts just a little bit, if you're willing to play that game at the belief level, at the seeds level, if you're willing to clear away the conflicts, the fears, the sabotage, the limiting beliefs, so that you can remove the chains, so you can remove the restrictions and live a life of freedom, then you have something to experience that most people don't. You have a level of fulfillment waiting for you. And that's what I want for you. So my invitation to you is to choose wisely which path you're going to go on. And whichever one you choose, commit to it. There's nothing wrong with choosing either of these paths, but you can't choose the top path and expect the results from the bottom one. That's where people get hung up. That's where people create way too much expectation, and people create a lot of pain for themselves when they choose one path but expect the results of the other path. So if you're the kind of person that's willing to choose the growth, that's willing to choose to play at the deeper level, at the seeds level, then I'm going to make an invitation to you. We have a product that can help you. This is one of the very first products I made when I had that shift in 2005, when the life coach walked me outside of a seminar, and in about a 15-minute coaching exercise and a guided visualization, he helped me foundationally change my belief system. And because of that internal shift, everything moved in my life. People saw the shift in me. They asked me about it, and I felt it. It's like a huge weight was lifted from my shoulders. And I know many of you feel that weight because I hear it all the time. You feel like there's more. You feel like you should be achieving more. You feel like there's this anchor, below the surface that you can't see. And that's exhausting. So I'd rather you let go of that anchor and actually release the brakes so that you can run faster rather than continuing to travel uphill, continuing to go against the stream, continuing to fight against the current. So if you're willing to play that and you want our support, my invitation to you is consider investing in this program called Releasing the Brakes. There are 4 CDs in it. The essence of the program is to help you identify what those deeper seeds are for you specifically. See, we can talk about how all of this works in a general sense, but until you put yourself under the microscope, until you get personalized, customized support, you're not going to be able to uproot your unique scenarios. That's what this coaching program is. It's as close to a one-on-one session with myself or one of my coaches as you can get. And the cool thing about it being on audio is you can listen to it over and over and over and over and over again. I have clients that listen to this audio program literally every single day for weeks and weeks at a time, so that it soaks in at an unconscious level. It actually starts to change the subconscious framework, the subconscious head talk. It changes their relationship with themselves. It starts to change the soil, right? It starts to change and uproot the seeds because they just flood their unconscious mind with this coaching program. So I want you to understand, this isn't just information that you consciously consume. It's a deeper level of deprogramming the problem. It's a deeper level of uprooting the seeds, right? So that's what Releasing the Brakes is. The investment is small compared to what you can create in your life and business. I mean, I want you to think about, if you didn't have the challenges, if you didn't have the sabotage that we talked about, the fears, if you really could let go of the unconscious patterns that are holding you back, what could you create? What could you create in your personal life? What could you create in your business? How much more money could you be generating on a monthly basis in your Mary Kay business if you weren't afraid of the things that you're currently afraid of? If you didn't have any resistance around talking to people that you don't know, around warm chatting, if you didn't have any resistance around asking people for their name and number, whether they're people that you know, or going up to somebody in the supermarket line, or if you didn't have any resistance towards actually calling the leads that you have, or any resistance toward coaching your hostess or your team members, if you didn't have any resistance in the business anymore, how much more money, let's dollarize this for a second, how much more money could you be generating in the business? How many more people could you be recruiting? How many more starter kits could you be selling? How many more product packages could you be selling if you didn't have the resistance? That's how I want you to think. And over the course of the next 6 months, over the course of the next 12 months, do you think you could generate more than $39 worth of value? And if you can, then this would probably be a smart business decision for you. But you also get a couple bonuses with this. You get a trial, 2-month trial in the Eagles Club, which is an ongoing monthly program where you just basically get shots in the arm of motivation, more conscious and unconscious programming and rewiring, see if that's something you want to stay in. And you also get a private coaching consultation. As I said a little bit ago, you've got to put yourself under the microscope basically and see what you specifically and uniquely need to address. So we have a lot of coaches that I have personally trained that are very familiar with the Mary Kay world, with Mary Kay lingo, with the Mary Kay journey. And we want to help you take this information and apply it specifically to you. So as a bonus for investing in yourself with this program, you'll get what's over $129 worth of value in a private coaching consultation. We'll get on the phone with you for about 30 minutes and help you identify how can you specifically apply this information to your life, to your unit, to your area, in your sales, in your neck of the woods, understanding how long you've been in Mary Kay or how short of a time you've been in Mary Kay. We've got to have specific details in order to get the greatest amount of outcome in any coaching interaction. So that's why we offer you a private coaching consultation. Anybody who hasn't had a consultation in the last 6 months has this bonus available to them. That's the opportunity for you to invest in yourself. $39 if you think that you can really shift just one thing. The question that I want you to ask yourself is not the question that most people ask. The question that most people ask is, what could go wrong if I take action? What's the cost of not taking action? What if I lose, specifically in this instance, $39? What if I waste $39? And then the unconscious mind starts ruminating on that question. It starts searching for answers of what can go wrong if you take action. But understand that if you are fundamentally opposed to taking action because that's your default programming, then you'll never be able to achieve your goals, because your goals live beyond your current comfort zone. And your fears are designed to keep you stuck inside your current comfort zone. So if you continue to ask yourself, what's the cost of taking action? You're lighting up your fears, and your fears will continue to keep you stuck. But instead of that question, what if you asked yourself, what's the cost of not taking action? Because ultimately, that's a bigger question. That's what most successful people ask themselves. It's not about what happens if I do take action. It's what happens if I don't take action. How many people will I not help? How many results will I not achieve in my life personally, for my family? See, most successful people are more afraid of the fear of regret than they are afraid of the fear of rejection. That's what I want you to consider. What's worse, never taking action or taking action? That's fundamentally the difference between the way that the successful person thinks and the unsuccessful person thinks.